your Genesis is still being written. Part 1. The beginning of light. Were you there? In the beginning, there was no sound, no word, no shape. Darkness spoke in the language of silence. A breath without rhythm, a pulse buried in the heart of emptiness. Nothing had a name, nothing had its place. Everything trembled, waiting to be chosen, waiting to become. And then it came, a single voice, sharp yet tender, slicing through the still air. It wasn't merely sound, it was will. It wasn't a command, it was an invitation. Let there be light! That one sentence carved the first line across the void. The echo became motion. The motion became warmth. Darkness learned to retreat, and light learned how to advance. But that light wasn't an explosion. It was a slow, quiet unfolding, a spark turning into a sunrise, igniting the wick of existence itself. As the light lifted its face, the corners of the void found shape. The air began to breathe, and even the dust learned direction. The waves shimmered, seeing themselves for the very first time. Light was not a thing that shone on creation. It was the very beginning of creation. It whispered, "Come forward, step into being." Everywhere the light rested, meaning took root. And meaning gave birth to choice. Only through light could shadow have form, and only through choice could understanding exist. The moment you saw light, you began to exist. Do you remember that first encounter? What did it sound like when silence broke? Was the air cold on your skin? Or did warmth rise quietly from within? When light traced the first line in your eyes, did your heart beat slower or faster? In that trembling moment, were you standing still or already stepping forward? Perhaps a nameless feeling brushed your throat. A whisper saying, "Here I am." That whisper was your first prayer, and it became your compass ever since. Each time you lose your way, that small light still calls you home. Light was never just a tool to see the road. Light was the road. It didn't demand, it invited. It didn't push, it waited. And when it spoke again, it asked only this: "Will you lift your eyes so I may light your path?" In that question, your heart trembled. Would you stay, or would you take one more step? The light didn't promise answers, only the courage to begin. And so, the story of Genesis is not only about the birth of the world. It is about the birth of you. Every dawn, the same voice still speaks. And every time you choose to walk toward that light, you rewrite your own beginning. Today, once again, will you let the light call your name? Will you allow it to carve a new horizon? In the silence of your heart? Because perhaps, just perhaps, your own Genesis is still being written. Right now. Part 2. The Garden of Choice. Freedom is a promise, and promise is a choice. Eden was perfect. Water sang as it flowed to the lowlands. Trees remembered the rhythm of seasons. Sunlight rested gently on the edges of leaves. And every breeze carried the calm laughter of peace. To walk with God was like walking in music. And that music taught something deeper than rules. It taught closeness. The command was simple, almost tender. You may eat from every tree in the garden, but not from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It wasn't a cage, it was a boundary drawn by love. Because freedom isn't about moving anywhere you wish. It's about being able to stop for the sake of love. When you learn how to pause, you learn how to see beyond yourself. Adam and Eve learned this too. That love grows best within boundaries. And boundaries give birth to responsibility. Responsibility begins when respect is born. For the other, and then for oneself. Freedom balanced on that line was not light. Its weight gave it worth. But when the boundary broke, the music changed. The sound of leaves became the sound of distance. Where there had been harmony, there was now echo. That is why freedom's true value is revealed not in what we can do, but in what we choose not to do. Out of love. Every day, we walk through our own garden of choices, in a tone of voice, in a gaze held a moment too long, in the timing of silence, or the courage of a gentle no. Each of these choices reshapes the soil of our relationships. Today's choices build tomorrow's respect, or erode yesterday's trust. So ask yourself, where do I end, and where do you begin? This question isn't about separation. It's about connection. The line we protect between us is not a wall, it's a bridge. It lifts both hearts higher and keeps truth safe within. Freedom is another name for promise. And promise is a sentence we rewrite every day. It begins as a declaration, but only becomes real when it turns into habit. When love becomes a habit, even in trembling moments, it finds its way back home. What promises are you keeping today? The unspoken rules, the silent nods, the vows written only in your heart. Each quiet promise redefines your world. Sometimes saying no is love. Sometimes silence is protection. Which boundaries are you keeping alive? Which lines are saving someone you love? Freedom is not the length of desire. It is the distance love chooses to honor. So measure it again. Where have you stopped? And where have you begun walking again? Is love's outline getting clearer or fading under the noise? If it is blurred, draw the line again thin but true. It won't confine you. It will set you both free. The promises you make today will invite the version of you who comes tomorrow. Ask yourself, how do I want this relationship to remember me? Let that answer guide your next choice. Because promises aren't words. They are gestures repeated until they become grace. And under that wide sky of freedom, what kind of beauty are you protecting? Even if you fall, will you still leave space for a new promise to rise again? That space, that quiet opening, is where healing begins. It's the soil where love grows back. Part 3. The Rainbow Promise Renewal After Judgment. The world looked full, barns overflowed, cities grew tall, markets glittered beneath the sun, but beneath the noise of abundance, the wells of the heart ran dry. Truth became inconvenient. Greed became easy. People followed what they could see and forgot what could not be seen. God looked upon the spreading flood of corruption and decided to stop the current. Judgment was not destruction. It was redirection. A river must turn before it can find the sea again. One man kept his faith. He built a vessel under a cloudless sky and waited for rain that had never been. People laughed. Time grew heavy, but the rhythm of his hammer never wavered. Every strike was a heartbeat of trust, and every plank was a prayer nailed into hope. Then the rain came, at first gentle, then it roared, and the boundaries of the world dissolved. Mountains drowned, roads vanished. Words became too short for fear. Yet inside the ark, life breathed quietly. In that cramped wooden world, waiting became faith. Faith ripened into patience, and patience became the seed of a new beginning. Every seed first sprouts in darkness. When the storm finally stilled, the wind swept the sky clean. And across that vast emptiness, a ribbon of color unfolded, a bridge of light between heaven and earth. The rainbow was not the end of judgment. It was the beginning of restoration. It was God's signature across the sky. A single word written in light. Never again, 2 words yet endless in reach. Never again would destruction be the only answer. Never again would hope be cut off completely. The rainbow became both reminder and mercy, God's memory and ours. When sunlight touched the rain, it shattered into color. Just as pain breaks into meaning, the arc in the sky gathered what was lost and wrapped it in gentleness. It was an embrace written in light. So even today, after every storm, when the air still smells of rain, and the window glass holds a trembling drop of sun, a rainbow appears and whispers, "It's not over, let's begin again." Restoration doesn't come from grand miracles. It begins with small rememberings, a patient tone, a quiet kindness, a forgiveness not yet spoken aloud. We rebuild the world not with force, but with memory and mercy. We take the rough words of yesterday, sand them smooth, and rebuild trust one glance at a time. The rainbow does not only live in the sky. It lives in the shimmer of tears, in the soft edges of a smile, in the warmth of a held hand. Everywhere love returns, the rainbow hangs again. What does a rainbow mean to you? A lesson after failure, an embrace after anger, a warmth after despair. All of these gather into one promise. I will not give up on you. When that promise glows faintly above your heart, you begin to see one another again. Remember, restoration does not only descend from heaven. It rises from beneath our feet. Every time we choose to remember rightly, to speak gently, To wait with love, the rainbow becomes life itself. And when life learns to heal, history changes color. May your day be one of those colors. Soft, bright, and full of mercy. Part 4. The Journey of Faith. Courage to leave. Abraham left the comfort of Ur. The city behind him was full of warmth and safety, but the voice that called him was warmer still. He was given a map without a destination, a command without an explanation, a journey that began with only one word. Go! He did not know where the road would end. Only who had spoken. That was enough. When the voice is true, you don't need to see the horizon. Faith begins not with knowing, but with walking. He packed memories and livestock, family and silence. Beside him walked Sarah, whose laughter would one day rewrite despair. Behind him trailed Lot, carrying both hope and hesitation. The desert stretched wide. Days burned with heat. Nights glittered with stars. 1,000 quiet witnesses. Each step forward was a conversation between fear and trust. The longer the road grew, the clearer the promise became. Your descendants will inherit this land. The older he grew, the younger his hope became. And when age itself began to laugh at him, God returned laughter as a child. Isaac, a name that meant joy reborn. But even laughter was tested. Faith that had walked for decades was asked to climb a mountain. On the slopes of Moriah, a father and son walked in silence. The air was thin, the heart heavier than stone. Father, the boy asked, we have fire and wood, but where is the lamb? The man's voice trembled but did not break. God will provide. Those words were not logic, they were a leap. A bridge made of trust, not proof. Each step upward was an argument between love and obedience. Each breath was a prayer for mercy. And just as the blade rose, light intervened. The voice that once said go now said stop. A ram caught in the thicket shimmered beneath the morning sun. Provision was not the end of the story. It was the meaning of it. God prepared the ram, but Abraham had prepared the trust. Faith isn't perfect certainty. It is the courage to keep walking when the map disappears. Sometimes, leaving is the holiest act of faith. Leaving comfort, leaving explanation, leaving the illusion of control. The end of what feels safe is not a cliff, it's a threshold. When fear blocks your first step, faith looks up and sees not ground, but the voice that called you. Ask yourself, what is calling me? Do I trust the one who calls? The answers aren't found in arrival. They're found in motion. Roads become real only when walked. Every departure rearranges the stars above your life. And in that new constellation, you begin to see what truly guides you. Your compass may not point to certainty, but it can still point to presence. Faith does not demand reasons. It remembers relationship. So when God's command feels without cause, remember His trust in you is the reason. And someday, when you look back, you will realize the journey was never about reaching a place. It was about becoming the person who could finally stand there. Because in the end, what God prepared wasn't the mountain. It was your heart. Part 5. Forgiveness and Providence. When God's plan turns all things to good. Joseph's story did not shine with gold at the start. It began with the rough edges of betrayal. Jealous eyes watched a dreamer, and a young man's vision was thrown into a pit. Chains followed, a foreign tongue, a stranger's land. The weight of being misunderstood. Yet even in the lowest place, his heart remembered the one who saw him. He worked with honesty where no one was watching. He prayed where no one would answer. The nights in prison were long, but God's memory was longer. Dreams once again became doors, and interpretation became the road to freedom. In the valley of waiting, Joseph learned a still center that could not break. It wasn't power that made him strong. It was trust. Standing before Pharaoh, his words saved a nation. Wisdom gathered grain. and foresight softened famine. But the real test came later, when hunger drove his brothers to his feet. The past stood before him, trembling. Old wounds opened their eyes. Forgiveness did not come easily. It came with a deep breath, a silence that felt eternal, and a choice that cost him tears. Then he spoke. You meant it for harm, but God turned it for good. To save many lives, that sentence was more than emotion. It was revelation. Only those who have walked through pain can see the architecture of Providence. From that higher ground, bitterness fades and clarity remains. Providence is a thread that mends accidents into purpose. Even the torn pieces of our mistakes are rewoven by His hand. Goodness does not always shout at the end. It whispers all along the way. To forgive is not to erase memory. It is to rearrange it under new light. When we choose forgiveness, God expands our story beyond ourselves. Through one act of grace, families are restored, peoples preserved, generations redeemed. Forgiveness does not cancel the past. It frees the future, and in that freedom, love finds room to work again. So ask yourself, what pit still echoes inside you? What word still stings when remembered? Forgiveness is not proof of being unhurt. It is the faith to look beyond the wound. God's plan never avoids our tears. It flows through them, through our failure, our weakness, our repentance. He keeps weaving good. So ask again, what is God turning to good in this? And answer quietly, I will not stand in the way of that good. Sometimes that decision is a soft word. Sometimes it is holding back a harsh one. Sometimes it is waiting one more day. Then you will know the plan was always moving, and all you had to do was let your heart be carried by it. Because through surrendered hearts, God saves many lives still. Epilogue. To walk together into the next step. This story began with light, and it ends with light still moving forward. From the first spark of creation to the quiet rhythm of forgiveness, every chapter was a way for love to take one more step closer to us. The invitation of the beginning still stands. The garden still whispers. The rainbow still stretches across the sky. The footsteps of faith still echo in the desert. And the warmth of mercy still finds its way into the hearts that choose to forgive. Where are you standing now? Among these 5 lights: creation, choice, promise, faith, and grace. Which one holds your name tonight? The story is not over. It never was, because Genesis was never only about the world beginning. It was about every soul learning to begin again. Every step you take toward light writes another line in your own Genesis. Every act of mercy creates a new dawn. If this journey has left a small flame in your heart, carry it into tomorrow, walk with it. Let it show you how far even a small light can reach. And when the night feels long again, remember, the same voice that once said, "Let there be light," is still speaking, and it's calling your name. So let's keep walking, not away from the dark, but through it, until every shadow learns to shine. Subscribe, not just to a channel, but to the next chapter of your own story, because the light is still moving, and it's waiting for you.